Maya Chen sat in the corner of the Galactic Trade Station's crowded cafeteria, picking at her synthetic protein meal, while alien conversations buzzed around her in dozens of languages. At barely 5 feet tall, with shoulder-length black hair and wearing a faded maintenance jumpsuit, she blended into the background like wallpaper. The Zephyrian traders at the next table discussed shipping routes without even glancing her way. The tall, blue-skinned Altarians debated weapon specifications while completely ignoring her presence. This was exactly how Maya preferred it. She had been working as a low-level technician on Nexus Station for 3 years, and in all that time, she had perfected the art of being invisible. The other species saw humans as a young, unremarkable race, barely worth acknowledging. They were polite enough, but humans were considered primitive compared to the ancient civilizations that dominated the galaxy. Most aliens viewed Earth's people as useful for manual labor and basic technical work, but nothing more. Maya finished her meal and walked through the station's main corridor toward the docking bays. The massive space station orbited the neutral planet of Kepler 442b, serving as a hub for trade between the 5 major galactic powers. Ships of every size and design filled the docking bays, from sleek Vorthan warships to massive Krellian cargo haulers. The air hummed with the constant sound of engines, loading equipment, and alien voices conducting business. She made her way to Docking Bay 94, where her assignment waited. The work order on her tablet showed a routine maintenance check on a visiting ship's atmospheric processors. Standard procedure, nothing complicated. Maya had done hundreds of similar jobs since arriving at the station. The ship in question was a Zephyrian merchant vessel called the Silver Wind. It was a mid-sized craft, about 200 meters long, with the characteristic curved hull design that Zephyrian engineers favored. The ship's captain, a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms, stood near the airlock talking to his crew in rapid, clicking sounds that passed for their language. Maya approached with her toolkit, but the captain barely looked at her. He gestured toward the ship with one of his 4 hands and said something that her universal translator rendered as, "Human technician is here for atmospheric check. Standard procedure, will take maybe 2 hours." His tone suggested he considered her presence about as noteworthy as a cleaning robot. Maya nodded politely and entered the ship. The interior was typical Zephyrian design, with flowing curves and bioluminescent lighting that pulsed in gentle patterns. She made her way to the atmospheric processing unit, located in the ship's lower deck near the engine compartment. As she worked, Maya's trained eyes automatically cataloged everything around her. The ship's layout, the type of shields, the weapon systems, the crew complement. Old habits died hard, even when disguised as routine maintenance work. She noticed the ship had been modified with additional armor plating and what looked like military-grade sensor arrays. Interesting for a merchant vessel. While running diagnostics on the atmospheric processor, Maya overheard conversation from the deck above. The universal translator was picking up fragments of heated discussion between the captain and his crew. To shipment, must reach Vorthan space. Humans don't suspect anything. Weapons will give us advantage we need. Maya continued her work, expression unchanged, but her mind raced. It sounded like the Silver Wind was carrying illegal weapons, possibly to one of the hostile factions that had been making trouble in the outer systems. This kind of arms smuggling was exactly the type of activity that Nexus Station's security forces worked hard to prevent. She completed her diagnostics and prepared her report. Everything appeared normal with the atmospheric systems, just as expected. Maya packed her tools and headed back to the airlock, where the Zephyrian captain waited with obvious impatience. "All finished," Maya said in her quiet voice, handing him the completed work order on her tablet. "Atmospheric systems are functioning within normal parameters." The captain barely glanced at the report before signing it with a flourish of one purple hand. "Good. Human work acceptable." He dismissed her with a wave, already turning back to his crew. Maya walked away from the Silver Wind, her expression calm and unremarkable. To anyone watching, she appeared to be just another human technician completing routine work. Nothing special, nothing worth remembering. But as she walked through the station corridors back to her quarters, Maya's mind was already working through the implications of what she had overheard. Arms smuggling through neutral space was a serious violation of galactic law, and the weapons could end up fueling conflicts that might cost thousands of lives. Her small apartment in the station's residential sector was as unremarkable as she was. Basic furniture, a few personal items, and a small viewing portal that looked out at the swirling clouds of Kepler 442b below. Maya sat at her desk and activated her personal computer, accessing the station's public databases. She cross-referenced the Silver Wind's registration with shipping manifests and trade licenses. According to official records, the ship was carrying agricultural equipment to the Vorthan colonies, but the modifications Maya had observed suggested otherwise. The additional armor and sensors were more appropriate for a military vessel than a farming supply ship. Maya leaned back in her chair, thinking. In her 3 years on Nexus Station, she had encountered suspicious activity before, but had always chosen to mind her own business. Getting involved meant drawing attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted. But weapons smuggling was different. Too many innocent people could get hurt. She spent the next hour carefully researching the Silver Wind's crew and recent travel patterns. The ship had made several trips to remote systems where military conflicts were brewing, always carrying innocent-sounding cargo, according to their manifests. But Maya's trained instincts told her there was more to the story. The next morning, Maya reported to her supervisor's office for her daily work assignments. Commander Torres was a middle-aged human who oversaw the technical maintenance division. He was one of the few people on the station who treated Maya like more than just a piece of equipment. "Morning, Chen," Torres said without looking up from his desk full of work orders. "Got a few routine jobs for you today. Atmospheric checks on 3 ships, and a power coupling replacement on a Krellian freighter." "Commander," Maya said carefully, "I think there might be something you should know about the Silver Wind in Docking Bay 94. Torres looked up, surprised. In 3 years, Maya had never volunteered information about anything beyond her assigned duties. "What about it?" "I observed some modifications to the ship that don't match its registered purpose, and I overheard conversations suggesting they might be carrying undeclared cargo." The commander frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Chen. You sure about what you saw?" Maya nodded. "The ship has military-grade sensor arrays and additional armor plating." The crew was discussing weapons shipments to Vorthan space. Torres was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya's calm expression. "I'll pass this information along to station security. They can decide whether it warrants investigation." "Thank you, sir." As Maya left the commander's office, she felt a familiar tension building in her shoulders. By reporting her suspicions, she had taken the first step out of the shadows she had carefully maintained for 3 years. But some things were more important than staying hidden. 2 hours later, while Maya was working on a routine repair in another section of the station, alarms began blaring throughout Nexus Station. The public address system crackled to life with an urgent announcement. "All personnel to emergency stations. Security alert in Docking Bay 94. This is not a drill." Maya felt her stomach drop. The Silver Wind was in Docking Bay 94. She quickly secured her tools and made her way toward the docking bays, staying with the crowds of station personnel who were either responding to emergency stations or being evacuated from the area. Through the crowd, Maya could see security forces rushing toward the affected bay with weapons drawn. As she got closer, the sound of energy weapon fire echoed through the corridors. Someone was shooting. Maya pressed herself against a wall and carefully peered around the corner toward Docking Bay 94. The scene was chaos. Zephyrian crew members from the Silver Wind were engaged in a firefight with station security forces. Bodies lay on the deck, both alien and human. The smugglers were making a desperate attempt to escape with their illegal cargo. What made the situation worse was the weapons the Zephyrians were using. These weren't standard personal defense weapons. They carried military-grade plasma rifles that could punch through station bulkheads and cause catastrophic damage to life support systems. Maya watched as a security officer took cover behind a cargo container, pinned down by concentrated fire from 2 Zephyrian fighters. The officer was trying to call for backup, but the smugglers were advancing on his position. In seconds, he would be overwhelmed. Every instinct Maya had developed over her years of hiding told her to stay back, to remain invisible, to let station security handle the situation. Getting involved meant revealing herself, meant risking everything she had worked to build. But watching that security officer about to die, knowing that weapons smugglers were about to escape with enough firepower to fuel small wars across the galaxy, Maya felt something she had kept buried for 3 years, beginning to surface. The Zephyrian fighters were moving in a standard tactical formation, but they had made a critical error. They were focused entirely on the security officer's position, and hadn't secured their flanks. There was a clear approach from their left side through a maintenance corridor that would put an attacker behind their cover. Maya found herself analyzing firing angles, weapon capacities, and tactical options, with the automatic precision that came from years of training she pretended not to have. The security officer's plasma rifle ran out of charge, leaving him defenseless. One of the Zephyrians laughed and started moving in for the kill. Maya made her decision. She moved. What happened next would shatter every assumption the galaxy had made about the quiet human technician who nobody ever noticed. But for now, she was still just Maya Chen, maintenance worker, invisible and unremarkable, stepping out of the shadows for the first time in 3 years. Maya moved through the maintenance corridor with practiced silence, her soft-soled work boots making no sound on the metal deck plates. The sounds of the firefight grew louder as she approached the flanking position she had identified. Her heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. These were responses trained into her long ago, before she became a nobody maintenance technician on a forgotten space station. She reached the access panel that would give her entry to the area behind the Zephyrian fighters. The panel was locked, but Maya had been maintaining these systems for 3 years. She knew every bolt, every circuit, every weakness in the station's infrastructure. Her fingers found the manual override, and the panel slid open silently. Through the gap, Maya could see the 2 smugglers advancing on the pinned security officer. They moved with military precision, covering each other's movements, communicating through hand signals. These weren't ordinary criminals. They were trained soldiers, possibly former military, which explained how they had managed to bring military weapons aboard a neutral station. The closer Zephyrian was about 15 meters away, his purple skin gleaming under the dock lights. His plasma rifle trained on the cargo container where the security officer was trapped. The alien had 4 arms, which gave him an advantage in weapon handling, but also made him overconfident in close combat situations. Maya slipped through the access panel and found herself behind a stack of shipping containers. The nearest Zephyrian had his back to her, focused entirely on the security officer ahead. His partner was positioned about 10 meters to the right, also facing away from Maya's position. The maintenance toolkit Maya always carried included several items that could serve double duty. The plasma torch used for cutting through damaged hull plates, the magnetic grappling device for moving heavy components, and the industrial adhesive applicator that could bond materials at the molecular level. But Maya's hands went instead to the emergency kit every technician carried. Inside, along with medical supplies and emergency rations, was something that few people paid attention to. A simple signal flare, designed to help rescue teams locate stranded personnel. Maya activated the flare and rolled it across the deck toward a support pillar 15 meters to the left of both Zephyrians. The bright red light and hissing sound immediately drew their attention. Both aliens spun toward the distraction, weapons raised. In that moment of confusion, Maya moved. She covered the distance to the nearest Zephyrian in 3 seconds, moving in a low crouch that kept her below his line of sight. Her approach was silent, efficient, and completely unexpected. The alien's 4 arms meant nothing when he couldn't see the threat coming. Maya's first strike hit the Zephyrian's lower right elbow with precise force, causing his grip on the plasma rifle to loosen. Her second strike, delivered simultaneously, struck a specific pressure point on his neck that temporarily disrupted the nerve cluster that controlled his upper arms. It was a technique she had learned long ago, adapted for Zephyrian physiology. The alien stumbled, his weapon clattering to the deck. Before he could recover, Maya had snatched up his plasma rifle and was already moving toward his partner. The second Zephyrian turned at the sound of his colleague's weapon hitting the deck, but Maya was already behind cover again, this time armed with military-grade firepower. "Human!" the remaining smuggler shouted in accented standard. "Show yourself. Your friend dies if you do not surrender." Maya could see the security officer from her new position. The man was wounded, plasma burns visible on his left shoulder. But he was alive and alert. He was looking around, trying to understand what had just happened to change the tactical situation so dramatically. "I am just maintenance worker," Maya called back in the broken standard she had always used when speaking to aliens. "Please do not shoot." "I am not threat," the Zephyrian laughed, a harsh clicking sound. "Maintenance worker who disarms trained soldier? I think not. Come out now, or security human dies." Maya was analyzing the situation. The remaining smuggler was positioned behind a solid cargo container that would stop plasma fire. He had a clear shot at the security officer, but his position was vulnerable to attack from above. The docking bay's ceiling was crisscrossed with support beams and utility conduits that could provide access to an elevated position. "Okay," Maya called out. "I come out. Please do not hurt security officer." She set down the plasma rifle where the Zephyrian could see it, and stepped into view with her hands raised. The alien kept his weapon trained on her while maintaining his threat position relative to the wounded security officer. "You are not ordinary human," the Zephyrian said, studying Maya with all four of his eyes. "Move like soldier. Fight like soldier. But records show you are technician for 3 years." "I have some training," Maya admitted, maintaining her submissive posture. "But I am not soldier. Just want to help." "Training," the alien repeated mockingly. "Yes, I see your training. Very interesting." He gestured with one of his weapons. "You will now help me leave station. Humans make excellent hostages." Maya nodded submissively and began walking toward the Zephyrian's position. As she moved, she was counting steps, measuring distances, calculating angles. The overhead support beam she had identified was now directly above the smuggler's position. The utility conduit running along that beam contained high-pressure atmospheric recycling lines. "Stop there," the Zephyrian ordered, when Maya was about 5 meters away. "Turn around slowly." Maya obeyed. But as she turned, her hand found the small plasma torch on her belt. The motion was hidden by her body position, and the Zephyrian's attention was split between watching her and keeping track of the security officer. "Now we go to my ship," the alien said. "You walk in front. If station security shoots, you die first." "I understand," Maya said quietly. She was now facing away from the Zephyrian, looking up at the ceiling. "But I think you should look up." "What?" The alien's eyes automatically followed her gaze upward. Maya triggered the plasma torch and aimed it at a specific junction in the overhead utility conduit. The brief, focused beam severed a high-pressure atmospheric line that immediately began venting processed air in a violent rush. The sudden pressure release caused a cascade failure in the connected systems. Emergency valves triggered throughout that section of the ceiling, creating a localized atmospheric disturbance that sent loose debris and recycled air rushing downward in a directed blast. The Zephyrian was caught directly in the downdraft, temporarily blinded and staggered by the sudden pressure change. His aim wavered as he struggled to maintain balance. Maya spun and dove for the plasma rifle she had set down earlier. Her roll brought her up in a firing position just as the alien cleared his vision and tried to reacquire his targets. The security officer, despite his wounds, had also taken advantage of the distraction. He had rolled out of cover and was reaching for his backup weapon. For a moment, all three were armed and dangerous, weapons aimed at each other in a triangle of potential death. "You are not maintenance worker," the Zephyrian said slowly, his weapon trained on Maya. "Who are you really? Human?" Maya held her plasma rifle with the easy competence of someone who had used such weapons many times before. Her stance was textbook military, her aim steady and professional. "My name is Maya Chen," she said. And for the first time in 3 years, her voice carried the authority she had once commanded. "I am maintenance technician, level 3, assigned to Nexus Station for past 3 years." "And before that?" the alien pressed. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Behind her calm exterior, memories were surfacing that she had spent 3 years trying to forget. Images of starships burning in space, the screams of wounded soldiers, the weight of command decisions that cost lives. "Before that," Maya said finally, "I was Colonel Maya Chen, 15th Tactical Fighter Wing, Earth Defense Force, Squadron Commander of the Crimson Hawks, the unit that held the line at the Battle of Proxima Station when the hegemony tried to push into human space." The Zephyrian's 4 eyes widened in recognition. Even aliens who paid little attention to human military history knew about Proxima Station. It had been the first major engagement where human pilots had demonstrated that Earth's military was not as primitive as the galaxy assumed. "The Ghost Wing," the alien whispered. "Your squadron was called the Ghost Wing. Pilots who could disappear from sensors, strike without warning, vanish before retaliation." Maya nodded slowly. "We developed new tactics, hit-and-run strategies that took advantage of human adaptability and smaller ship profiles. The hegemony lost 47 capital ships in 6 months before they agreed to human territorial claims. The wounded security officer was staring at Maya with amazement. Like most humans in space, he had grown up hearing stories about the Ghost Wing. They were legends, heroes who had earned humanity's place at the galactic table through skill and courage. "You died at Proxima," the Zephyrian said, confusion evident in his voice. "Official records show Colonel Chen was killed when her fighter was destroyed covering the evacuation of damaged ships. My fighter was destroyed," Maya confirmed. "But I ejected at the last second." Emergency pod was recovered by a civilian transport that didn't report the rescue until after the battle was over. By then, Earth Command had already declared me killed in action and awarded the posthumous decorations. She paused, memories flooding back despite her efforts to keep them buried. "I was in the hospital for 8 months. Physical injuries healed, but..." Maya's voice trailed off. "Combat stress, guilt over the pilots I lost. The weight of being called a hero when so many good people died under my command." The security officer understood. Many veterans struggled with survivor guilt and the psychological cost of war. "When I was discharged, Earth Command offered me a promotion and a desk job. But I couldn't handle being back in uniform. Couldn't handle being responsible for more lives. So I changed my identity, took a civilian job, and tried to disappear." "Why maintenance work?" the Zephyrian asked, genuinely curious now despite the fact that they were all still pointing weapons at each other. Maya almost smiled. "Because nobody pays attention to maintenance workers. You can go anywhere, see anything, and people treat you like furniture." It was perfect for someone who wanted to be invisible. The alien was beginning to understand the situation he had stumbled into. The quiet human technician who had just outmaneuvered him was one of Earth's most decorated military pilots, a tactical genius who had helped establish humanity's reputation as a force to be respected in galactic politics. "So what happens now, Colonel Chen?" the Zephyrian asked. Maya considered the question. For 3 years, she had successfully hidden from her past, from the expectations and responsibilities that came with her reputation. But in the last few minutes, that carefully constructed anonymity had been shattered. "Now," Maya said, "you're going to surrender your weapon and submit to station security. Your ship will be searched, and the illegal weapons you're smuggling will be confiscated. You'll face charges for arms dealing and attacking station personnel. And if I refuse..." Maya's expression hardened, and for a moment, the alien could see the warrior who had commanded fear and respect throughout the galaxy. "Then you'll discover why the hegemony agreed to a ceasefire after only 6 months of fighting human pilots." The Zephyrian looked into Maya's eyes and saw something that made his decision easy. This was not the submissive maintenance worker he had initially confronted. This was Colonel Maya Chen, the Ghost Wing commander, one of the most lethal pilots in known space. He slowly lowered his weapon and placed it on the deck. "I surrender," he said quietly. Maya kept her plasma rifle trained on him while the wounded security officer called for backup and medical assistance. Within minutes, the docking bay was filled with additional security personnel who secured the smugglers and began processing the scene. As Maya watched the aliens being led away in restraints, she realized that her 3 years of anonymity were over. Word would spread quickly through the station and beyond. Maya Chen, the maintenance worker, had just revealed herself to be one of Earth's greatest military heroes. But looking at the wounded security officer who was now receiving medical treatment, at the illegal weapons that would no longer reach their intended destinations, at the lives that had been saved by her intervention, Maya found that she didn't regret her decision. Some things were more important than staying hidden. Word spread through Nexus Station faster than Maya had expected. Within 12 hours of the incident in Docking Bay 94, every alien trader, diplomat, and crew member knew that the quiet human maintenance worker was actually Colonel Maya Chen, the legendary Ghost Wing commander. Conversation stopped when she walked past. Aliens who had never acknowledged her existence now stared with mixtures of fear and respect. Maya tried to return to her normal routine, but everything had changed. Her supervisor, Commander Torres, called her into his office the morning after the incident. "Chen," he said, looking uncomfortable as she sat across from his desk. "Or should I say Colonel Chen?" "Maya is fine, sir. I'm still the same person." Torres shook his head. "No, you're not, and we both know it." He pulled up a file on his computer screen. "I've been reading your military record, the real one, not the civilian identity you created. 47 confirmed kills in space combat. Tactical innovations that are still being studied by military academies. The architect of humanity's first major victory against an alien power. Maya said nothing, waiting for him to get to the point. The thing is, Torres continued, Nexus Station has been getting some interesting communication since yesterday. The Earth Defense Force wants to know if you're willing to return to active duty. The Galactic Trade Council wants to offer you a security consultant position, and 3 different alien governments have filed formal protests about having a human military asset working undercover on a neutral station. Before Maya could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The emergency klaxons were different this time, longer and more urgent than the security alert from the previous day. Torres grabbed his communicator. Control, this is Torres. What's the situation, Commander? We have multiple hostile contacts approaching the station. Long-range sensors show a hegemony battle fleet, estimated 12 ships including at least 2 heavy cruisers. They're demanding the immediate surrender of the human known as Maya Chen. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. The hegemony was the same alien confederation she had fought 3 years ago. Apparently, they had never forgotten about the Ghostwing commander who had humiliated their fleets at Proxima Station. Estimated time to arrival? Torres asked. 47 minutes, sir. Torres looked at Maya with growing concern. Can station defenses handle a fleet that size? Maya was already analyzing the tactical situation. Nexus Station had impressive shields and defensive weapons, but it was designed to handle pirates and smugglers, not a full military assault. 12 hegemony warships would overwhelm the station's defenses within minutes. No, Maya said simply. Station defenses won't be enough. They'll demand my surrender, and when the station refuses, they'll attack. Thousands of people will die. So what do we do? Maya stood up from her chair, and Torres could see the change in her posture. The submissive maintenance worker was gone, replaced by the military commander who had once held the line against impossible odds. I need to see what ships are currently docked at the station, Maya said. And I need access to the civilian evacuation protocols. Maya, you can't be thinking of surrendering yourself to save the station. I'm not, Maya replied. I'm thinking of stopping them before they get close enough to threaten anyone. 20 minutes later, Maya stood in the station's main hangar bay, looking at the collection of civilian ships that were permanently docked at Nexus Station. Most were cargo haulers, passenger transports, and small personal craft. Nothing that could stand against hegemony warships in open combat. But Maya wasn't looking for conventional weapons. This one, she said, pointing to a small sleek ship near the back of the hangar. Who owns it? Station records showed the ship belonged to a wealthy Altarian merchant who used it for personal travel. It was fast, maneuverable, and equipped with high-end civilian sensors and communications gear. More importantly, it had been modified with racing-grade engines that could push it to speeds approaching military fighter performance. I need to requisition this ship, Maya told the hangar chief. On whose authority? Maya turned to Commander Torres, who had followed her to the hangar. Sir, I'm formally requesting emergency activation of my Earth Defense Force commission. As the ranking military officer present, I'm taking command of station defense. Torres hesitated. Officially, he didn't have the authority to activate a supposedly dead colonel's military commission. But with a hostile fleet approaching and no other options, regulations seemed less important than survival. Granted, he said. Colonel Chen, you have command authority for station defense operations. Maya nodded and turned to the hangar chief. Prep this ship for immediate launch. I need full fuel, maximum engine power, and any defensive systems it might have. As the hangar crew began preparing the ship, Maya studied the approaching hegemony fleet on her portable scanner. 12 ships in a standard attack formation, approaching at steady acceleration. The lead ships were heavy cruisers, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. Behind them came destroyers and frigates, forming a screen that would prevent any escape attempts. It was a formation designed for siege warfare, intended to overwhelm defenders through superior numbers and firepower. The hegemony had learned caution since their encounters with human tactics, but they were still thinking in conventional terms. Maya smiled grimly. That was their first mistake. The ship's engines powered up as she settled into the pilot's seat. The controls were different from the military fighters she had flown, but the basic principles were the same. Thrust, maneuvering, navigation, sensors, all the tools she needed for what she had in mind. Colonel, Torres's voice came over the communication system. The hegemony fleet is hailing us. They're demanding your immediate surrender. Tell them I'm not available for pickup right now, Maya replied as she began her pre-flight checks. But let them know they're welcome to try and find me. The small ship lifted off from the hangar deck and accelerated toward the station's exit. Maya kept her speed moderate and her course predictable, appearing to be just another civilian craft leaving the area before the shooting started. But as soon as she cleared the station's sensor shadow, Maya did something that no civilian pilot would ever attempt. She shut down the ship's transponder, activated every electronic countermeasure the craft possessed, and pushed the engines to maximum emergency power. The ship leaped forward like a bullet fired from a gun, accelerating at nearly 10 gravities toward the approaching hegemony fleet. Maya was pressed back into her seat by forces that would have knocked out most civilian pilots, but her military training and enhanced physical conditioning allowed her to remain conscious and functional. On the hegemony flagship, alarms began sounding as their sensors detected the small craft's impossible acceleration and sudden disappearance from their tracking systems. "Report," demanded Admiral Krath, the four-armed Zephyrian commander of the fleet. "Single small craft launched from station," his tactical officer reported. "Civilian configuration, but exhibiting military performance characteristics. Ship has gone dark, sir. We've lost sensor lock." Admiral Krath had fought human pilots before. He knew what this meant. "All ships, combat alert. Begin evasive maneuvers immediately." That's not a civilian ship anymore. But Maya was already inside their defensive formation. The first hegemony ship to die was a frigate on the outer edge of the formation. Maya's ship appeared on their sensors for less than 2 seconds, just long enough to deliver a precisely targeted burst of information warfare. The small craft's communications array, pushed far beyond its normal specifications, delivered a concentrated data attack that overwhelmed the frigate's computer systems. Every screen on the warship went dark. Navigation failed. Weapons systems crashed. Life support flickered and died. In the span of 30 seconds, a fully operational military vessel became a drifting hulk, its crew struggling with emergency life support while trying to understand what had just happened. Maya was already moving toward her second target. The hegemony had learned to respect human military technology, but they had never encountered information warfare on this scale. Maya was using techniques that she had developed during the Proxima campaign, turning civilian equipment into weapons of electronic destruction. Her second target was a destroyer that was moving to intercept her position. But Maya's ship was no longer where their sensors indicated. Using the civilian craft's sophisticated communications gear, she had created multiple false sensor images, each one appearing to be her ship accelerating in different directions. The destroyer fired at 3 separate targets, hitting nothing but empty space. Maya's actual position was directly beneath the warship, hidden in the shadow of its own sensor array. This time, her attack was even more devastating. Instead of simply crashing the ship's computers, Maya uploaded a virus she had written years ago specifically for hegemony systems. The malicious code spread through the destroyer's networks like wildfire, not just disabling systems but actively turning them against the ship itself. The destroyer's own weapons began firing randomly. Its engines spun up to dangerous speeds. Emergency systems activated throughout the ship, flooding compartments with fire suppression foam and sealing blast doors, trapping crew members in isolated sections. Within 3 minutes, the destroyer was not just disabled but actively self-destructing as its own systems turned against it. "How is this possible?" Admiral Krath demanded as he watched 2 of his ships reduced to wreckage by a single small craft. "It's just one human pilot, sir," his tactical officer replied, fear evident in his voice. "That's Colonel Maya Chen, the Ghost Wing commander from Proxima Station." Admiral Krath felt his blood turn cold. He had been a junior officer during the Proxima campaign, and he had seen firsthand what human pilots could accomplish when they stopped playing by conventional rules. "All ships, full defensive formation, coordinate fire control. We kill that ship now, before she destroys the entire fleet." But Maya was already 3 moves ahead of him. She had studied hegemony tactics for years, learning their strengths and weaknesses, their standard operating procedures, their predictable responses to different threats. Admiral Krath was reacting exactly as she had expected. By ordering his ships into defensive formation, he had clustered them together, making them more vulnerable to the kind of attack Maya was planning. By coordinating their fire control systems, he had linked their computer networks, creating pathways for her electronic warfare techniques. Maya's ship appeared on sensors directly between 2 heavy cruisers, flying at impossible speeds through a gap barely wider than her own spacecraft. Both cruisers opened fire, their massive weapons designed to destroy heavily armored targets. But Maya wasn't there when the energy beams arrived. She had already slipped beneath one cruiser's firing arc, using its own bulk as a shield while she delivered her most devastating attack yet. The virus she uploaded this time was different. Instead of simply disabling systems, it rewrote core programming, turning the heavy cruiser's weapons control systems against the rest of the hegemony fleet. The cruiser's main guns swiveled toward its sister ship and opened fire at point-blank range. Massive energy beams tore through armor plating and into critical systems. The second cruiser, caught completely off guard, took devastating damage before it could raise shields or return fire. In the chaos that followed, Maya struck again and again. Her small ship danced through the hegemony formation like a ghost, appearing just long enough to deliver crippling electronic attacks before vanishing back into the sensor shadows. One by one, the mighty warships of the hegemony fleet were reduced to drifting hulks, some destroyed by their own weapons, others disabled by computer viruses, a few simply abandoned by crews who could no longer trust their own equipment. Admiral Krath found himself commanding a fleet of 12 ships where only 3 were still operational, and those were showing signs of system instability that suggested they too had been compromised. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from the human ship." "Put it through," Krath ordered, knowing he had no choice left. Maya's voice came over the fleet communication system, calm and professional despite having just single-handedly destroyed most of a battle fleet. "Admiral Krath, this is Colonel Maya Chen. I believe you came here looking for me." "Colonel," Krath replied, "I acknowledge your superior position. What are your terms?" "Simple. You will withdraw your remaining ships to the edge of this system and remain there until Earth Defense Force ships arrive to escort you back to hegemony space. Any attempt to approach Nexus Station or attack civilian targets will result in the destruction of your remaining vessels, and you will surrender yourself for trial." Maya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Admiral, let me explain something to you. For 3 years, I tried to be invisible. I worked as a maintenance technician, fixing atmospheric processors and power couplings, hoping everyone would forget about Colonel Maya Chen and the Ghost Wing." She paused, and through the communication system, Admiral Krath could hear the sound of her ship's engines powering up for another attack run. "But you couldn't leave me alone. You had to threaten innocent civilians to get to me. You forced me to remember who I am and what I'm capable of." The small ship appeared on sensors again, this time positioned directly in front of the Admiral's flagship. "I am Colonel Maya Chen, commander of the 15th Tactical Fighter Wing, architect of humanity's victory at Proxima Station. I am the reason your people learned to fear human pilots. I am the ghost that haunts your nightmares." Admiral Krath stared at his sensors, watching the single small craft that had just demonstrated why humans had earned their place among the galaxy's great powers. "And if you or anyone else ever threatens this station again," Maya continued, "you will discover that some ghosts are more dangerous when you try to wake them up." The hegemony fleet began its withdrawal 30 minutes later. Word of the engagement spread through galactic communication networks within hours, carrying a message that every military power in known space would understand. Humanity's greatest pilot had returned to active duty, and the galaxy had been reminded why Earth's warriors were not to be underestimated. Maya returned to Nexus Station to find crowds of civilians and aliens waiting for her in the hangar bay. But instead of accepting their cheers and praise, she quietly walked through the crowd toward her quarters. She had work to do. The galaxy was full of threats that required someone who could disappear into shadows and strike without warning. Maya Chen, maintenance worker, was gone forever, but the Ghost Wing was flying again.